Hi, welcome back. Remember to subscribe down below if these videos resonate with you in any way so you can get notification when I post any more, and I can keep these videos coming for you. And if you like what I'm posting, give me some thumbs up. You can leave questions in the comments down below if there's something that you would like me to talk about in these videos to help give you some clarification or insight into anything that you may be going through specifically. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about some things that I experienced and that I went through personally, and it took me a long time to really recognize where I was at in the process and the way that I was reacting to a lot of things that was going on around me and in my life. I would probably honestly say that I spent the first 8 years after I left my ex living in a 100% reactive state. This, when my children at the start of this were very young, and the dynamics between the households were it was turmoil. There was no consistency, there was no continuity, there was everything I would try to do was being met with the complete opposite at the other house, and it felt like a lot of it was being done just to be spiteful or to create chaos or confusion. And my poor babies in the middle of all this didn't know what was up and what was down, and they just had two parents that they loved, and they were trying to figure out things for themselves at their age, and now they have two households. And so the constant turmoil and chaos that was being created and presented left me in a place of not having any energy left to work on myself or really put time into healing myself. So the days that I didn't have my children were spent being active and trying to fill voids in my life. And I was afraid to be alone with my thoughts. I was afraid to be alone. I was constantly in fear of something happening with my children, or I never knew when cops were going to show up at my door, or CPS would show up at my door, or I would receive a message that, my ex was changing court orders without any court orders to change. And it was just this constant not knowing what was coming next, that I constantly was just waiting for the next shoe to drop. I didn't know any other way to be at this point. My my children would come back from the other parent's house, and I never knew what I would be getting. I never knew if my children would be in good moods, if they would be wound up on sugar, if they would be dressed inappropriately for the weather, or come home with their heads buzzed and they had no hair, or their hair would be 8 different colors, or drop off would end up being cop escorted and 2 hours late, and just all kinds of chaos that I couldn't properly prepare to parent. I had to wait and see how my children were going to be when they came to me, to then determine what we would do the rest of that day, what we would do maybe the next couple of days, depending on their mindsets that they were in. They most of the time were this big bundle of emotions and energy that needed an outlet, and my house became that. So they would come over and they would be angry, and they expressed it how the best they could for their ages, or they would be mad or confused and or sad and hurt, and I was left trying to manage all these random emotions of little ones that I was never able to properly raise them the way that I wanted to raise them. I couldn't be the mom I wanted to be because I was living in a place that, and living in this world that was not in my control, I guess you could say. I was constantly living based off of my ex and the things that he would produce, the chaos he would produce, the situations that would come up, the fear, the confusion in my children. And so through all of this, the only thing I knew how to do was react. I reacted to how my children were when they came over. I reacted to the messages that my ex would send, and I didn't know how to be any other way. Reaction was the only place that I knew how to be, because that was 90% of where my life was picking up pieces and putting children back together and trying to fix or resolve or battle out in court all these things that didn't even have to be. They were just there for entertainment of my ex. I don't know. To this day, I still don't know. But I spent a good 8 years plus reactively living in my life. And this eventually became my state of being at work. And in relationships, I was just emotionally checked out. I was emotionally unavailable. I had nothing to give because I was just waiting for something to happen, for something to go wrong, for something to break, because that was all I was used to in my life for a very long time. When I had the realization that I was reactively living my life, it was a huge eye-opening moment for me. I realized that it was a very toxic place for me to be in, and that in a way I had created this environment for myself within my home because I was allowing the negativity and the negative energies from my ex's house to come in and take over my house. So any positivity or good vibes that I would create when the children weren't here, or over the course of having the children, would be gone when they would come back. And it was just this ball of negative energy that was being brought over every single time they came over. So I realized I had to own up and fess to myself that, hey, part of this is on me because I allowed it to happen. I allowed my house to be the dumping zone for all of their pent up energies and emotions. And at the time, though, that was what I felt they needed, and I did the best that I could in that moment. And that's the biggest thing for us to remember when we're in these transition periods in our life, or any point in our life, is as long as we do the best that we can with what we have, then we can't beat ourselves up for not doing more. because at the time we may not realize there is more. We may not realize there is a light at the end of the tunnel, or there is another way to manage these situations, because we are so caught up in this ball of chaos and confusion, and we may not even have any self-esteem or self-worth of our own because it was stripped away from us for so many years, that we're just living in this place of feeling dead inside and not knowing how to navigate our way out of it. So again, this comes back to healing ourselves and giving ourselves time to really process the emotions that we had. And if you're coming out of a toxic relationship, it's most likely that your emotional, your mental, your physical, your spiritual, your energetic bodies are all completely out of whack. You've probably have been stuck in a state of fight, flight, freeze for a very long time. And we have to reprogram our bodies to not live in this state of fear and waiting for the next shoe to drop, and just being in this unstable environment. We have to allow our bodies to heal so we can reprogram that and teach our nervous system that not every situation needs to be a heightened state of alert. The reality is that when we learn to decompress and let go and not continue to live in this state of fear, we open our doors and our minds and our eyes to so many other possibilities of ways to manage situations. Living in this constant state is not only detrimental to ourselves, but it's detrimental to our children. And we try and we do the best that we can in that moment, and we have to acknowledge that and pat ourselves on the back for the fact that we are fighters and we will survive whatever's thrown in front of us. We're living proof of that. But we have to get ourselves out of this stuck state that we're in of constantly waiting for the next court date or the next email or text that's going to just be created to stir up shit. So I understand that we're all at different places in this. We all have different levels of alienation that we're going through, different levels of toxic exes. So not all of this may resonate with all of you or apply, but definitely we have all been in a state of living in fear and fluctuation and walking on eggshells and not knowing what was around the next corner. So that is something that we can all relate to and understand that is we need to work through and heal ourselves. So what do I mean by a reactive state? A reactive state is responding to a situation or responding to a question not from a place of consciousness or in the present moment, but it's coming from a place in our subconscious that is telling us that this question or this situation is, we need to be fearful of it, that we need to find a way out of it, and it needs to be this, and it's like this heightened urgency to resolve it or get away from it, because in the past, similar situations resulted in more abuse or more detriment. And so our bodies, our nervous system, gets programmed to linking these situations together. And the reality is, while they are similar and they may have, the same intentions from our ex or a partner, they're not necessarily, the same situation. So being able to separate them and take each moment as an individual situation and look at each one individually is coming from a place of more conscious thinking and responding versus reactive. So a good example of reactive living and being in a reactive state is, so say for instance my ex would send me a message that would have all the negative language in it, telling me I'm a horrible mother, or on the flip side saying, oh my God, you're the best mom the boys could ever have, however, and then it goes down this whole spiral of everything I've done wrong, or things I've never done wrong but he's saying I've done wrong. Or I remember one time he would not bring the kids home for custody exchange because he told the police he was fearful of me. I am 5'5". My ex is like 5'10" and outweighs me by at least 100 and some pounds. And my children got back to me probably an hour plus later than the court orders said, and it was cop escorted. Completely uncalled for, no grounds for it, no justification for it, but that was where I was at. So the fear I already have inside of me of, him not bringing my children back one day in general at that point is just amplified, because now here I am in this situation that not only is he not bringing my children back, he's putting police into the situation, which adds a level of anxiety. And then he's throwing accusations out that have no bearing on being true whatsoever. And he's putting this out there to authorities. And my children are in the middle. So when situations like this keep happening and happening, it's designed to make you react. It's designed to make you look like you are that person they are trying to paint you to be. It's designed to say, hey, look, see, I told you, she loses her cool. And meanwhile, the person standing there with you, or the person on the other side of this, has no idea what the backstory is. So it's being reactive doesn't necessarily just mean that, it's this one or two topics that keep coming up and you've lost your cool over it. It's sometimes layers and layers and layers and layers of little things that keep building up, that you eventually reach a breaking point. And when you don't allow your body and your nervous system to reset from that, your breaking point, you're always sitting right under it. So all it takes at this point is one little small jab, and you are going from 0 to 100 and you're exploding, because you are so at the edge of your limit on all of it that there's no room for you to go. So the problem with this is when that reaction and that frustration and that level of confusion that you're living in gets directed to other people. It gets directed to your children, because your patience are just worn so thin, and you're probably exhausted on so many levels that you don't know what else to do. Every little thing triggers you and pushes you over the edge, and Your children see it. They may end up being victim to it. People you don't even know could become victim to it because you're just in this reactive state. And all it takes is one little button push, and we can all probably say our exes know how to push our buttons, and that's how they continue to have this control over us no matter how hard we try, because we allow them to keep pushing those buttons and triggering us and making us react. So don't beat yourself up over any of this if you realize or are making connections that you are in kind of a reactive state. You just need to become aware of it and work on healing yourself so you can start approaching situations from a more neutral and grounded place. And when you are talking with your children, it's more from a place of love and support versus I'm so mad at so and so that they did this to you, and next thing you know it's all coming out and you're talking to a 5-year-old and all they hear is mommy's upset with daddy, or however the scenario plays out with you. So it's just you need to become mindful of it so you can work on fixing it and changing that pathway. So what are some things that you can do to shift this energy within us so we aren't living so reactively and we can start living our lives from a place of peace and harmony within us going forward? One is to start healing yourselves. Work on getting your nervous system regulated. There's tools online, there's somatic coaches that can help you work through, the releasing stuck energies within your body. There's breath work, there's therapy, and just having even a coach that can help guide you through these moments when they come up and how to handle it when you feel triggered. But you don't want to keep allowing yourself to become so exasperated with your toxic ex partner that you keep living in this state, because it's hurting you on so many levels, emotionally, mentally, physically, that will bleed over into your children's lives as well. The second thing you can do is to become mindful of your words and your tones when you're communicating. I mentioned this in another post, but don't be afraid to walk away from a situation or a question that was brought up if you feel triggered. You can politely excuse yourself and communicate to your children or whoever you're communicating with that you need a moment and you need to kind of process what was just said or what just happened, and allow yourself to process those feelings and those emotions before you come back to the topic at hand. Being able to take a step back and see this from your children's perspective can really be eye-opening, and I highly recommend that you make that something that you strive for. It's not easy to remove yourself and your own emotions from a situation that you are in, as well as your children, but in the grand scheme of things, we are here to support and guide and raise our children the best way that we can, and so they have a better life than we've had ourselves, and that they don't continue living in these toxic cycles as they get older. So the more we can help guide them and heal them and support them on this journey that they're on, the better off they're going to be in the long run. And as a parent, the one thing we probably all want for our children is for them to have better lives and to have more than we had, and to be successful and feel loved unconditionally and supported in the things that they do. So be that parent for them. The third, be consistent. Once you become aware that you are, reacting to things versus consciously reacting to things or consciously communicating on things, you want to become consistent in the way that you are communicating. So one thing that you can do to keep consistency when you're communicating with your children is, when they're not with you, keep your communication times, whether it's a phone call, a text message, depending on the age and your orders and whatever your setup is, but keep it consistent. If they're older, or they're already being alienated and you're not seeing them, keep trying to communicate with them. You want to be able to show them that you're there for them no matter what. And even if it's just a text message that says, "Hey, I love you and I hope you have a great day," or "I love you, I hope your day was amazing." If you're doing that every day, they may not respond, but they're seeing it. They're aware of it. I'm going to leave it at that. They're aware of it. There's so many situations and different ways, because I know some of you may not actually have any communication with your children, or your ex blocks all communication that you try and put out there. So my heart goes out to you if that is your situation. But I would still say that you try, if it's sending a letter in the mail, or showing up, stopping by their school, or anything that you can do to just say, "Hey, I'm still here for you," and let them see that. That's going to mean the world to them. It really will. Next, practice gratitude. This is a big one. I was taught and raised to have manners, so saying please and thank you for things was normal for me. So thanking people for things that they did, that was kind of just second nature for me. However, practicing gratitude was not easy for me to incorporate, especially if you're in such a bad place or a negative place. It's hard to see the good, and it's hard to focus on the good. So I read somewhere and it kind of resonated with me, so I took the practice, spend it a little bit and use it. But for me, I started incorporating gratitude by finding an object that I would see, that I know I would see on a regular basis. So I chose a stop sign. And every time I see a stop sign, I say something that I am grateful for. And I do this in front of my children as well. So they pick up on it and they will join in. And it can be anything as simple as, I'm grateful that I woke up this morning. I'm grateful that I'm able to breathe. The level of gratitude, you can start small and it can build, but putting gratitude out into the universe and speaking it will raise your vibrations. It will make you feel better inside, and the universe is going to start to pick up on the things that you are grateful for, and it'll bring that into your life more. So instead of always focusing on the negative, try to find at least one spot in your day that you're grateful for. Maybe it's the sunrise. Maybe it's having a pillow or getting to sit outside and drink a cup of coffee in silence. Anything that you can think of that brings you a peace or a sense of joy or happiness, start to verbalize that or write it down in a journal. And the more you do this, the more you will start to see the good things that you have in your life. The last thing that I would suggest that you could do to start shifting some of these energies is to allow your children to have a voice. It doesn't matter how old they are, but let them feel and know that they can speak their mind, they can have an opinion, they can have their own view on something, and it's okay. It's okay if what they see or feel doesn't match what you see or feel. That's okay. Everyone has their own perspective on every situation. And you can allow them to express themselves and then come back and have that open communication with them, whether it's, telling them and letting them know that, it's maybe something they said or they expressed needs to be talked about because it's not okay to put out there in the world. I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with some stuff, but just let them know that, it's okay they have their own opinion, and they need to know that their voice is being heard and that it's being supported. And then you can parent from there. If it's, let me see. Say your child comes home and they start bad mouthing about someone else at school and they start talking poorly about them. You can allow them to express themselves, have their opinion, and then you can redirect that and say, I understand how you feel and I hear what you're saying, but how would you feel if, this child went home and started talking like this about you? I feel like this is a really bad example, but having a hard time coming up with one. But I hope you get the gist. It's just about letting them feel like they have a safe and nurturing environment to express themselves. And then as a parent, you can redirect that in a loving way, if it's not something that's politically correct or it's not something that society in and of itself would be okay with. Having 3 boys, there are definitely conversations that come up in my house that I have to remind them that it's okay that we have these discussions here, but it's probably not something that they want to go and sit in the middle of a restaurant and talk about, because you may get people that don't agree with you and that they are going to look down on you for that. So it's just making them aware that not everybody is going to be supportive of their opinions and their perspectives, and that's okay as well. So allowing our children to feel that they have a voice and that they are being supported, regardless of the fact that, they're in the middle of this toxic situation or turmoil or whatever your case may be, is going to give them a sense of peace. It's going to allow them to feel that you are there for them and that they have a place to come when they need it. And that's what's really important, is that they feel that they have this sense of security with at least one of their parents. So definitely you want to be that parent for them. You can help them learn techniques to get in touch with their inner world, such as meditation, feeling charts, breath work, asking them questions that help them get in touch with their emotions. So For instance, they come home from the toxic parent's ex and they're upset about something that happened over there, and you want to ask them, well, how does that make them feel? How do they feel inside? What do they want to do? Do they want to yell? Do they want to cry? Does it make them feel sad? Teaching them about their emotions and their feelings and giving meaning to them will help them to start to learn to express themselves better as well. So, reacting, we all react. There's no escaping it 100% in your life. Maybe as you really grow and get into yourself, I'm still not there, so I can't say that there's this place. But I'm definitely in a better place than I was now that am working on healing myself, and I've healed a lot of my past, and I'm aware when something triggers me, so I'm not reactive all the time. And if I do end up in a situation where, I'm at my wit's end and I end up reacting negatively in front of my children, I always make a point to come back and apologize to them, explain to them kind of where I was at, and let them know that I'm working on it. I'm working on healing myself, and I'm working on changing things that I didn't like or I don't agree with, and that they can do the same. They have that choice. We all have a choice as to how we react and how we behave and the things that we say and how we say them. So it's not something that's out of our hands. We just a lot of times are not in a place mentally or emotionally to have a grasp on that. So I hope that this sheds some light on, reacting versus conscious communication, and ways to really help bring your children into this awareness as well as yourself. And I really hope that, over time you're able to gain some sense of peace and clarity and happiness back into your life and the lives of your children. So this is it for today. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their day, and with infinite love and gratitude. Namaste.